Great, good afternoon and many thanks for keeping it here on your official choice 2013 station, that is KTN. You are in time for KTN News Desk. This is news as it happened on this 13th day of March 2013. My name is Bulletin. Welcome to the program. Now let's take a look at the developing story of the day. Great. The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD, has won the first round of its poll petition seeking to compel the IEBC and Safaricom to release election data that it requires to challenge Uhuru Kenyatta's election as Kenya's fourth president. At the hearing this morning before Justice Isaac Lenaola, the IEBC and Safaricom agreed to furnish CORD with the requested information within the law. Our reporter Wilkester Nyabwa followed the proceedings this morning and joins us now live from the Milimani Law Courts with the very latest in that matter. Good afternoon, Wilkester.
Good afternoon, Bonnie Tunya. Now we are having some challenges with Wilkester's link from the Milimani Law Court, but what we do know right now is that the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy Court has won the first round of its poll petition seeking to compel the IBC and Safaricom to release election data that it requires to challenge Uhuru Kenyatta's election as the Kenya's fourth president. And do understand we do have a better link with Wilkester Nyabwa, who is joining us right now from the Milimani Law Courts with the very latest on this petition battle between CORD, the IBC and Safaricom. Good afternoon, Wilkester. What do we know so far? Good afternoon, Bonnie Tunya. Now we are indeed live at Milimani Law Courts. We have been here all morning. This is the second day of this petition. It will be remembered that yesterday Eliud Owalo moved to court seeking to have IEBC and Safaricom furnish him and really furnish the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy with information that would be vital in order to file a presidential election petition. This could in essence be called a round one victory, because today early in the morning we did see Justice Lenaola just send the parties out, send IEBC and the lawyers for Eliud Owalo, send them out into a 2-hour meeting to agree on what documents the IEBC could provide and the timelines within which it could provide them. They came back into the courtroom at around 11:30, the IEBC agreeing to provide the documents as required, and when they came back it would happen that it wasn't just the petitioners Eliud Owalo for CORD who wanted the documents. It would also be the lawyer for TNA, the TNA URP coalition, and also the Attorney General's office, IEBC agreeing to furnish all of them with the documents from the election. However, it is important also when we are speaking about Safaricom that Safaricom and the petitioners came to an agreement where what they basically agreed was that Safaricom would provide all documents that it could provide within the law, in accordance with the law, and this is the agreement that they have come to. So we could indeed call this a first round victory.
Well, what exactly in terms of specifics, what kind of information was CORD requiring from both the IBC and Safaricom? CORD
was seeking forms 34, 35 and 36 from the IEBC, among other things. The other things it was seeking include the final voter register. It was also seeking the final presidential tally, the final number that was announced. It was seeking these results, among other things that it was seeking. And initially the IEBC, earlier in the morning, the IEBC was objecting. It did say that the documents came to about 500,000. It would take a long time. It would take a lot of time and resources to provide these documents, but after they went into the meeting, the IEBC says it has no problems furnishing the documents that it can provide within the law, and that it shall do this.
We seem to have lost that signal again, but from what we're getting from Wilkiston Nyambwa is that finally CORD has gotten the documentation they needed from the IEBC to be able to file this presidential election petition. And of course, according to the law, CORD has 7 days after the announcement of the winner of that election, which was President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta, had 7 days to actually file this petition. We do know right now they do have the information they needed, and of course we're just standing by as and when they do file that particular petition. KTN will be the first to bring you that information. And as this goes on, CORD continues with its bid to challenge the election of Uhuru Kenyatta as Kenya's fourth president. An internal revolt over the petition is brewing with the alliance, as a section of Wiper Party aspirants and legislators elected in the recent polls have distanced themselves from the bid. Philip Kaloki, an aspirant on the Wiper ticket, led a team of elected leaders in denouncing the bid earlier today at a press conference held at a Nairobi hotel.
We wish to dissociate ourselves from intended petition by the CORD coalition. We believe that this nation is greater than an individual. We also believe that this is a time for the nation to rally together behind President-elect for the nation building. We, the Kamba community represented here, we wish to be part of the government of the President-elect, His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and we wish him the very best.
Now, those are the intrigues of this election petition. Of course, what we do know so far is that the IBC and Safaricom had been compelled to produce documentation requested or demanded rather by CORD to be able to file this particular election petition. Also, what we do know right now is that a section of elected leaders from the Wiper set of CORD coalition have distanced themselves from the petition and denounced it, and actually congratulating Uhuru Kenyatta over his win. Of course, KTN is staying on top of that developing story. We'll bring you that as and when it breaks. Still on election matters, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, has lauded the recently concluded elections, terming them peaceful and a classic showcase of African democracy. The IGAD Executive Secretary, Ambassador Mahbub Malim, says there was a marked improvement in the performance of the government institutions involved in the electioneering process, including the police and the judiciary. Ambassador Malim spoke during a joint press briefing with the organization that partnered with the regional body to facilitate peace initiatives during the elections. Businessman Manu Chandaria called the extended peace initiatives in the country beyond the elections.
And we can only remove poverty provided we create jobs. Internal jobs or external jobs, whichever we can create. The minute the person has that, then he is aspiring for a roof and a shelter. There is no way a country could go wrong if they continue on these issues.
I think the people of Kenya have shown a very high level of maturity, strength, resolve, and resilience. Every single person I talked to after the general election we've had on the 4th has been in a line. He or she has been in a line or a queue for an average of 4 hours. That is an exemplary behavior of a group of people who have decided to practice and to exercise their democratic rights.
Let's now move to other matters where the government has warned that foreign journalists working in Kenya without a valid press card issued by the Department of Information will be prosecuted. The government says it is also pursuing foreign journalists making films for public exhibition or sale within or outside the country without a proper license. Now, speaking at the weekly media monitoring briefing, the head of film services, Ernst Kerich, added that during the recently concluded general election, foreign journalists applied for and were issued with press cards to cover the election, and they need to ensure their accreditation is valid at all times. The Ministry of Information has, however, lauded the local media for their role and performance during the just concluded elections.
Foreign journalists applied for and were issued with press passes to cover the general elections. It is important to stress that this accreditation was only for purposes of news coverage of the general elections. However, contrary to the provisions of the law, as stated above, it has come to our attention that some journalists went ahead and also engaged in documentary filmmaking using the same press passes. This not only breached the law, Cap 222, the Films and Stage Plays Act, but it also denied the country revenue.
We have a lot of foreign journalists in this country, and how they are operating, we don't know. We may need to seek the support of the security personnel to help us identify who those people who are here illegally.
Express our deep concern over the deliberately negative role played by some international correspondents in the coverage of the elections. In this regard, we are happy that the local media refused to pick up the untruthful stories on the purchase of thousands of pangas or the footage run to depict the non-existent mayhem in the country. Stories must always be truthful and balanced. Media, however, managed very well the aspect of political advertising during this period. The committee can say without a doubt that using this platform, media stuck to issues of national concern and interest and clearly avoided incitement or hate and negative ethnic messages.
Great. To another story that has been making headlines, former head of civil service Ambassador Francis Muthaura has blasted the International Criminal Court prosecution for conducting a shoddy investigation that led to his confirmation of charges. In a fast media briefing after the collapse of his case, Muthaura says the prosecution case was based on false allegation and a compromised witness testimony, terming the ICC process as a tragedy. Muthaura added that despite these charges being dropped, he was not celebrating as the ICC case has broken his heart.
Whilst on Monday, the new prosecutor of ICC withdrew all charges against me, I'm relieved more than I can say. However, I'm not celebrating. The ICC case broke my heart, not only because I, Francis Muthaura, was charged, but much more so because I have seen injustice abused and manhandled by those whose primary duty it was to respect it and safeguard it at all costs. It is an injustice that charges were brought by the prosecutor. It is a tragedy that safeguards to prevent abuse of ICC mechanism so clearly and so obviously failed. To the prosecutor I say, please be fair, please investigate your cases, please look for the truth and make sure that your staff live by this guiding principle.
Now, as the debate over the county governor's offices rages on, the Nairobi County Governor-elect, Dr. Evans Kidero, says he is comfortable working from the City Hall offices as proposed by the Transition Authority. But the location of the governor's offices has been in the headlines recently, sparking a row between the Transitional Authority and the office of the government spokesman Muthaura. Dr. Kidero spoke at the Nairobi provincial headquarters after meeting with the city's departmental officer.
I don't think an office is important. What you do in the office is what is important. And I could work from the roadside. But history, City Hall has got a rich history. That used to be the governor's office. And I'm quite happy I chose to go back there. Yeah.
Now to a very tragic story. A heavy wind that swept across Nakuru town yesterday afternoon has left traders and building owners counting their losses. Several buildings and cars belonging to staff and individuals and around the provincial headquarters were destroyed as the wind blew away part of the rooftops of several commercial buildings. Now, according to the eyewitnesses and several individuals who were injured in the tragedy, the strong wind swept from the northern side of Nakuru town, forcing traders, business operators and retailers to scamper for their safety as it blew away anything in its path. Nakuru town has been experiencing persistent windy periods during the dry season. The residents are fearing for worse incidents in the future and have called on the local authorities to intervene and establish mechanisms that could forestall such destructions in future.
Tulikuja mbio mbio, tukasikia transformer hii ya power kama imeripuka, stima nayo ikaanza kupotea. Sio sasa nayo wakati nayo sasa hiyo watu nao wakapiga nduru, ni kitu gani imefanyika pandi.
Great, and this being NewsDesk, where news is brought to you as it happens. We do understand that the court presidential aspirant and de facto leader Raila Odinga is currently speaking to members of his party at the KICC. Have a listen.
In running on court, you have taken our struggle for change and reform forward, but a lot remains to be done. As I said on many occasions before, our opponents believe that reforms and change are already here and we need not fight for them anymore. To us in court, this election is just the beginning of the push by the people of Kenya to realize the fruits of their labor as far as change, reforms, democracy are concerned. I want to remind you of the words of the late U.S. President Ronald Reagan, and I quote Reagan, said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected and handed on to the next generation for them to do the same, or we will one day spend our sunset years telling our grandchildren what it was once like in a country where men and women were free but no longer are," unquote. In other words, freedom can be cancelled at any moment. We are here to defend democracy and secure it for posterity. And that's why we will shortly be moving to court, as have already been said, to secure the gains you have made so far and to get more. The Supreme Court that we are moving into is itself a product of a long and painful struggle that cost people their careers and their lives. It is now a reality and should be part of our motivation to defend what we have. Change and democracy are worth fighting for. That is part of why we have convened here today. I invite you to join our struggle to safeguard democracy for our children and their children. We seek nothing other than safeguarding the gains made and ensuring that we hand over a better nation to our children. I invite you to embrace the ideals of duty to the nation, sacrifice for the nation, commitment to the nation, and patriotism to our nation. These are the ideals that have sustained this nation, and they are the same ideals that will carry us forward. I want to appeal to all Kenyans of goodwill, including those who ran in this election as presidential candidates, to support God in his quest for justice and truth through the courts of law. Justice serves everyone in the end. I want to remind all Kenyans of this famous classic poem which runs like this. First, they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Unquote. Today the victim may be caught. Tomorrow it will be somebody else. Let us join hands in seeking justice and fairness at the polls. Let us join hands in ensuring that elections count, that they are not exercises that are conducted to confirm preconceived conditions and positions. Let us join hands in rejecting the notion that a little electoral theft here and there every 5 years constitutes some kind of magical progression towards greater democracy and change. And above all, let us ensure peace and stability prevails in our country as we pursue justice in the courts. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is what actually moved me to make the appeal to the people of Kenya at that very trying hour for peace. 5 years ago, when a similar thing happened, we'd asked people to come out on the streets and demonstrate peacefully. And they did. The reaction by the authorities was to send security forces to shoot to kill. And we know the consequences. So we said, no, this time around we are not going to go to the streets, but we are going to go to the courts. And in the courts, we expect nothing but justice. But let me also assure all of you here that we won, and we won the first round, as we said. It was a 90-minute victory. This is confirmed. I was called by some media houses, international, and told that congratulations. And I asked them why. They say, oh, we now have it officially. The exit polls shows about 55% win for court. That is what the exit polls said. And the exit polls don't lie. There are 3 different groups that did exit polls. Very different from 53 to 55% victory for us. And this is going to be proved in the court of law, that it is us who won. So you should therefore feel proud. Don't be looking down. You need to know and be assured that we won, and we won big. We did not lose these elections. We are dealing with criminals.
That was called Raila Odinga addressing members of his party at the KICC. Of course, this meeting coming on the sidelines of the first round of victory they've just gotten, where IBC and Safaricom have been compelled to produce information that court could use to file this particular petition. Of course, we do know that Raila is alleging that he had information from international media that he had actually won. All those details will be coming up. But of course, we are keeping an eye on this particular presidential election petition, and KTN will be fast to bring you news as it breaks. Let's now go to Nyeri, where plans to usher in the new system of governance in Nyeri County are in top gear to ensure a smooth transition to the devolved government units. Now, Nyeri County Commissioner Michael Mwangi says 4 subcommittees have already been formed to make plans for the swearing-in ceremony scheduled for the 20th of this month at the Dedan Kimathi Kamukunji grounds in Nyeri town. Now, the Constitutional Implementational Authority is expected to arrive in Nyeri tomorrow to oversee the transitional plans.
The ceremony will take place between the hours of 10 and 2, because according to the regulations that we have, we should be sworn before 2 p.m. We'll be able to ensure that the transition is commences in earnest. I also want to confirm that the Transition Authority has already posted members of staff to the county, and we are working hand in hand. We have all the offices that are going to handle the transition, and we are working together as a team. We are appealing to the members of the public to turn up in large numbers because this is our ceremony. It is a ceremony of its own kind. It's an event that is going to mark the implementation of the new constitution.
Welcome back to the program. This is KTN News Desk. News as it happens. Let's now take a look at what is happening in the world of business. We'll start with how your money is working for you at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Let's take a look at the biggest gainers of the day. CFC Insurance Holdings is up 9.94%. You can get it at about 9 shillings and 95 cents, with Kengen also moving up at about 9.29 percentage points, going at a price of 14 shillings and 70 cents. Centum Investment Company is back on the winning counters. We're doing 8.87%. You can buy the stock at 17 shillings and 80 cents, with CIC Insurance Group and National Bank closing the winners for us, moving up marginally at 8.65 and 8.64% respectively. Let's now take a quick look at the biggest drops of the trading day. CFC Stanbic Holdings down 3.20%, going at a price of 60 shillings and 50 cents. Mumia's Sugar edging down 1.04% with a price of 4 shillings and 75 cents. Standard Group has also moved down marginally, down 0.94 percentage points with a price of 26 shillings and 25 cents. Of course, having moved earlier from the kind of numbers we saw, it was selling at 24 shillings earlier on. City Trust and CMC Holdings, not a lot of movement, but they're still in the red category at 4.48%, 4.48 shillings flat, and 13 shillings and 50 cents. And of course, those numbers coming from the NSE are scrolling at the bottom of your screen in the course of this live telecast. Now let's take a look at what else is happening as regards to your money in the African markets. That we call that here factors to watch in the African markets. And as always, we'll start here at home with a look at the Kenya shilling that traded steady against the dollar on Tuesday ahead of the CBK rate setting meeting that maintained the CBR rate at just about 9.5%. According to data from this ABC Bank, the NSE 20 share index rose by 4% to close at just about 4,985.91 points following a peaceful election. Now in the fixed income market, government bonds worth 530 million shillings were traded, down from 722 million in the previous session. Of course, that is data courtesy of ABC Bank. Moving on, the Kenya interest rates held on Tuesday after months of easing, buying time to assess the economy after the presidential elections, whose outcome will be challenged in court. Elsewhere in Kenya, Kenyan internet service provider Access Kenya posted a 62% rise in profits on Tuesday, helped by a rise in the corporate customers attracted by its high-speed fiber network. Let's talk about oil now. And Tullow Oil concluded with Uganda to extract tax from its former exploration partner Heritage Oil in pursuit of its own commercial heritage plans to prove in London's High Court this week. Elsewhere, around 50 tons of Ivory Coast cocoa is being held by dealers who lack permits to export under the country's new auction system, leaving some of the others that do have the permits struggling to fill the contract after explorers have confirmed this report to a Reuters report. Elsewhere, Guinea dismissed concerns over the future of Rio Tinto's giant untapped Simadu iron ore mine in the country's south, saying on Tuesday that it had the means and expertise and will take the project forward. Elsewhere, Brazil's Vale Steel is expected to export 4.9 million tons from coal mine in Mozambique this year, despite a temporary shutdown of flooding hit railway line linking its pit with the port. Now, a senior official has confirmed this news. Let's go down south, and South African stocks finished flat on Tuesday as a drop by index heavyweight snappers offset gold producers that benefited from a second day of local currency weakness. Also, the Bourse operator JSE, that is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, posted a 15% drop in full-year earnings on Tuesday as slow trading volumes put a drag on the overall revenue in the South African markets. Now let's go further afield, and Asian shares fell on Wednesday on investor concerns that the recent rally on global equities was running out of steam, while sterling clawed its way off lows but remained vulnerable after a week of UK data fed fears of a triple recession. Finally, Brent futures held steady above the $109 barrel on Wednesday on expectations of a steady growth on the global oil consumption. Now, with a surprise fall in the stockpiles in the world's top oil consumer, the United States, that is, providing additional support. Well, those are the factors watching the African markets. Now you know where your money is and where it needs to go. Let's come back home, where the Central Bank of Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee on Tuesday maintained its benchmark lending rate at just about 9.5%. This was widely expected, with analysts pointing out inflation and the need to assess the recent rate cuts as a reason to retain the benchmark rate. Now, despite overwhelming confidence in sustained economic growth, rising international oil prices and uncertainty over the Eurozone economy, the MPC is still evaluating with caution other monetary tools as on its disposal to address the challenges so far.
Over the last 4 meetings the MPC has held, the bank has been easing its foot off the pedal, trying to reduce the cost of credit in the market. Since July last year, the CBR has been coming down from the 18% high realized in 2011, working its way down to 13% in September 2012, to 11% in November of the same year, until this year when the CBR was slashed to 9.5%. There has been a quick response in the market, with banks lowering their interest rates, albeit not at the same pace as customers would have liked. In holding the CBR at 9.5%, the MPC noted that both inflation and foreign exchange fluctuations were within the acceptable range. However, given the additional month-on-month inflationary pressure observed in January and February, analysts believe the CBK was right to keep the CBR at 9.5%. Standard Chartered Bank Head of African Research, Razia Khan, says the pause in lowering the benchmark lending rate gives the MPC more time to assess whether previous actions had the desired effect in the market. Khan believes that should most variables remain stable and inflation remain range-bound in lower single digits, there is still a good chance for further easing by another 100 basis points. One area the MPC is closely monitoring is the effects of high international fuel prices and continued uncertainty over Eurozone economies have on the economy.
Great. Moving on, National Oil has plunged into the lucrative petroleum exports market. The state-owned oil marketer is setting up a petroleum exports business unit to serve a growing number of customers in the East African market. Recently, National Oil has ventured into South Sudan for its supply of bulk petroleum products, including fuels, lubricants and LPG to businesses and consumers, as it looks into setting up a retail stronghold in the East African market. In a statement by National Oil Chief Executive Sumaya Athmani, plans are underway to set up an ultra-modern LPG filling facility at the National Depot in Nairobi, as well as install mini LPG filling facilities at a number of key towns across the country. And now for some positive news. It's always clear for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner after U.S. airline regulator Federal Aviation Administration approved a set of fixes to the Dreamliner's battery, allowing her to resume flights. Now, 50 operational Dreamliners were grounded after the Dreamliner's lithium-ion batteries emitted smoke in several separate incidents, raising concern from airlines and passengers. The Dreamliner is the first plane worldwide to use lithium-ion batteries that recharge faster, hold more power and are lighter. However, the airline regulator says before the Dreamliner can officially resume flights, extensive testing and analysis will be conducted. The Boeing 787 is said to be one of the most fuel efficient in the industry, and Boeing delivered 46 Dreamliners to customers in 2012 alone.